presenter, and it is really dark up here. I've been reading in the dark. Is Eswani Valetti from Florida Gulf Coast University. And he's going to be talking about the effects of salinity on early life stages of oysters and implications for freshwater management. Eswani.
Good afternoon. I'm glad Leslie went before me, so she did a lot of very good presenting some of the relationship between salinity and freshwater inflows, etc. It was a great setup. In the previous meetings, I talked about the long-term monitoring of oysters in the Calusa and how the watershed runoff and freshwater inflows affect oyster reefs and specifically their responses, including diseases that protein conditions, X reduction, so on and so forth. What I thought I'll do today is focus on the early life stage of oysters and how salinity or freshwater discharges or runoff impacts the survival of these things, because it has implications for next year as in the establishment or survival of oysters in the river. As you all know, this area, especially the south of the Florida area, was rapidly evolving in order to accommodate the growth of this area. The research managers are, of course, all over the watershed, putting in structures such as piers, a lot of canals, and so on and so forth. And in other words, a lot of freshwater is out from a very large area and put into certain areas or smaller areas, making freshwater a point source pollution. As you know, about 60% of the rainfall for us happens in the summer months. June, July, August, September being the peak months. In other words, we have a lot of rain coming in the summer months, but little or no rain coming in the winter months. And as you can imagine, that will wreak havoc on the salinities in these estuaries where a lot of these organisms live. At least if these are mobile organisms such as fish or in some cases crustaceans, they can pick up the food. But if they are sessile organisms such as oysters, sea grasses, etc., they're stuck in one place. It's not like they can get up and move. So these organisms are a lot more susceptible to these kind of sunlight fluctuations compared to some of the mobile species. From previous experiments to previous results, this is a long-term average of about 10-12 years worth of data. The x-axis is the sampling months in a calendar year. The y-axis is the spat per shell. As you can see, in peak months, anywhere from July, August, September, the recruitment started somewhere between April, May on, going all the way to October. You get very, very good recruitments. Sometimes as high as 70 spat per shell, and it's very, very high recruitments. For those of you who want relative comparison, anywhere in the range of 3, 5, or 10 spat per shell is considered tremendous success in Chesapeake Bay in Louisiana, for the matter. So the good news for us is that excellent spat recruitment, in other words, the larvae coming into these areas and settling on whatever substrate is available for them. Another good thing is the reproductive period or the settlement period is quite long, as opposed to a big peak, roughly April, May time in Chesapeake Bay area, followed by a very small peak in September. But the good news for us is the reproduction period in oysters in our area is very large, so it's good news. The bad news is that, as you know, regulatory freshwater discharges or watershed runoff due to heavy rainfall we get in the summers, all of the water entering the estuaries is getting into the estuary in this part, which is more or less out in the reproductive season of the oysters. I think from last few presentations that I've made for this meeting, what I expected was that whatever is coming in and settling at the tail end of the season is really what is keeping the system going. So I'm going to use Calusa as a study site to just lay out the context about why this salinity study and so on and so forth. So when you look at upstream locations such as Piney Point, Iron Grove, and so on and so forth, going all the way to Charter Bay, salinities are lower here, salinities are higher, more or less more mean. We and the low downstream stations. And the salinities here can go anywhere from 0 to 10, 50 parts per thousand. Salinities here can go maybe 25, 28 parts per thousand, all the way to about 42, 45 parts per thousand. In other words, in nature where we are, the salinities can go anywhere from 0 parts per thousand, which is completely fresh water, to about 42, 45 parts per thousand, which is hypersaline. As you can imagine, the salinity of ocean water is 35 parts per thousand. In other words, the river is saltier than the ocean because of evaporation, etc. Leslie already talked a little bit about the relationships between the flows and the salinities at different sample locations. I put in a box here to show that roughly 10 to about 28, 30 parts per thousand or so is a salinity that is tolerable for oysters. More terrible salinities is a spectrum more in the range of 15 to 25, 28, 30 parts per thousand. So when you look at the oyster densities, it does look like the spat improvement is influenced by the density per se, not just density, there are other factors playing in place. If you remember the previous slides, the recruitment was highest in Harbor Bay, was least up in this area. If the recruitment is purely coming from local sources or neighboring reefs, you can see very little oysters developing here and a lot of oysters here, but it looks like, with the exception of Cape Ball here, the oyster reefs are fairly healthy, anywhere from about 800,000 all the way to about 1,500 or more. Actually, I suspect long-term average is somewhere between about 1,200 to 2,000 oysters per square meter or so in post action. And if you look at recruitment, it looks like the recruitment is lowest and upstream, and as you go downstream, it is higher. Which suggests two things. A, with all the fresh water coming into these estuaries, the salinities in the upper portions of the estuary are so low that the larvae are encountering a lot of mortality. And or, with all the fresh water that's coming in from Lake Okeechobee as well as the watershed runoff, there is a tremendous amount of fresh water entering the estuary, and all the larvae are simply flushed to the downstream locations. Therefore, we wanted to use oysters as wild organisms to look at cause and effect relationships about how freshwater or salinity influences the survival, growth, and establishment of these reefs. As we talked about, oysters are ecological important, and also they contribute indirectly to the economy of this region in terms of their filtration, secondary habitat, and so on and so forth. So the bottom line we want to find out is what role is salinity and or flushing playing into this recruitment and development of these oysters. So what we wanted to do was look at the various life stages of oysters, anywhere from the gametes, the embryos, the larvae, span. And with the Nichols did a great study, she's finishing her master's. She has a postdoc set that talks a lot more about oyster spats. I'm going to limit my comments to a minimum. I encourage you guys to look at the postdoc side. So we are looking at two temperatures, 25 degrees centigrade, which is very, very common for late spring in our area, to about 30 degrees. I think our summer water highs are about 30, 31, 32, or something thereabouts. Like I said, I'm going to focus on the gamete stage, the embryo stage, and the larval stage with the settings experiments, and briefly touch on the spat life stage. The first one is the gametes. We were exposing the embryos, the sperm and the eggs to various salinities, anywhere from 0 parts per thousand all the way to about 40 parts per thousand to mimic natural conditions that are found in our area. And we're going to expose these life stages for up to 4 days to these salinities and look at the resulting embryos as well as larvae, and look at the abnormalities, mortality, size, and so on and so forth. And the second set of experiments are exposing embryos to the same set of salinity conditions at 25 to 30 degrees, and look at the resulting larvae. As you can see, the endpoints are similar. Spat, I'm going to just show you 25 degrees centigrade because Emily has all the posts on. The eggs or the sperm are placed in 400 milliliters, exposed to various salinities, like I said, 0 to 40 parts per thousand for about 30 minutes. In other words, we're exposing them separately and combine them to see the fertilization success and how these fertilized eggs transform into embryos and larvae, and look at that abnormalities more commonly. In case of embryos, about 2 to 3 hours after fertilization, the eggs start to divide and form embryos. So we use about 2 to 3 hour embryo stage in these experiments. And larvae are the 24-hour larval stage. By that time, they are free swimming well into their stage, and that larval stage can go on for about 2 to 3 weeks or so. The spat, we used 10 to 15 millimeter oysters, 25 to 30 spat per beaker, 4 replicates, and so on and so forth. In the case of embryos and the larvae, the sample size is several hundreds of embryos and larvae per beaker. Looking at the gamete fertilization, I just want to focus in on the graph for a second because the theme is similar. The x-axis is going from 0, 3, 5, 10, 15, all the way to 40 parts per thousand, and the y-axis is the normal fertilization. The reason why I don't really have any data here is all the non-fertilized, all the eggs are dead, and that's the reason why I don't see it. 25 parts per thousand seems like it's slightly higher, but the differences are somewhat minimal between 25 and 30 parts per thousand. But looking at this, it looks like salinity between 15 and 35 are optimal in terms of fertilization for these things. Either low salinities or very high salinities are not good for this. In other words, if you have too much rainfall, too much runoff, or too many releases, or no releases and no rainfall, either one is not good for fertilization. If there's no fertilization, there's no embryos, there's no larvae, there's no sediment to spat, and therefore there is no moisture going forward. Looking at the abnormalities, same thing, looking at any salinities below 10 parts per thousand, all the embryos of the larvae are dead. Same is the case of 40 parts per thousand. Don't worry about this, the differences in the x-axis is magnified. You normally expect about 10-15% of abnormalities, so that's not very uncommon. So the take-home point is that below 10 parts per thousand or 40 parts per thousand is not good. Extreme something is not good. The mortality, this is the mortality of the y-axis, salinity on the x-axis. Essentially, regardless of temperature, salinity below 10 parts per thousand is very stressful, resulting in 100% mortality, and same is the case at 30 degrees. In other words, they're already encountering a stressful salinity, and on top of that, the temperature is also high, and especially if these releases or freshwater flows that happen in the summertime when water temperature is already high, it's a double whammy, all those stressors is not very good. Looking at the size of larvae after 4 days, simply keep in mind all these things are dead. Some larvae at 40 parts per thousand at 25 degrees survive. There are slight differences between 25 degrees and 30 degrees, but the bottom line is looks like salinity between 15 to 35 are better. Looks like they really prefer about 25 to 35 parts per thousand, especially when they're that young. When exposed at the embryo stage, similar abnormality rates, at 0 and 3 parts per thousand, everything is dead. You couldn't really find anything. 5 and 10 parts per thousand, high abnormalities. Anywhere from 15 to 35 is low abnormalities, in other words, favorable salinities. No larvae at 40 parts per thousand because everything is dead. Same story, 30 degrees centigrade is stressful, salinity between 15 to 35 are okay, below 10 parts per thousand, not so great. Looking at the size of embryos, again, it looks like at salinity is about 20 to 30 parts per thousand. They're doing very well, growing rapidly at 25 pedigrees. But the bottom line is anywhere between 15 to 35 or sometimes 40 is fine. Keep in mind, I think I should say these are the size of larvae resulting from the embryo exposures, not necessarily the embryos, size of embryos. Looking at the A4 larval abnormalities, like we saw, everything is dead, very high abnormal rates at very low salinities. Higher salinities they seem to tolerate better. Now, previous experiments have shown that high abnormality rates will result in high mortality. Same is the case with the size of the larvae. The bottom line is 15 to 35 is pretty good for these early life stages. Lower or higher salinities, not so much. Same lower salinities, high mortality, higher salinities are fine. Just to touch base on the spat, going from 0, 3, 4, 5 and all that stuff, it looks like the salinities about 10 or so, the oyster spat were able to survive. Below 10 parts per thousand, they don't survive very well, and 7 parts per thousand. It's not surprising that the spat are able to tolerate maybe 9 parts per thousand better than embryos or larvae, because as they're growing older, they have shells, they can at least insulate themselves from the external salinities, so that's the reason. And again, I think going back, if you look at roughly give or take 10 parts per thousand all the way to about 35 parts per thousand, it roughly translates to about 500 cubic feet per second to about 3,500 cubic feet per second of water that would create tolerant or somewhat optimal conditions for oysters, or at least early life stages when they can close the hatching. So just wrap it up: normal fertilization, embryo development, lower abnormality, lower mortality, between 15 and 35 parts per thousand. High salinities and low salinities are not very good. And also another take-home point is that temperatures by itself are very stressful. Long water temperatures are very stressful. Probably the species is probably more or less in the southern water of its natural range. It does go all the way up to Mexico, but water temperatures are already very high. So especially as the temperature is high and they're stressed with high temperatures, if they're exposed to lower salinities and other stressful conditions, they succumb to mortality much sooner. Larvae are more resistant than embryos, etc. But as these life stages grow older and they become adult oysters, they're a little more tolerant. So once they're adults, they can take lower salinities a lot better than the early spat, etc. So that I end. Funding has been generously provided by a variety of sources, including Management District, Department of Education, EPA, etc. Boswell and others applaud as did any number of graduate operators.
Thank you, Ms. Ronnie. Are there any questions?
Simple question, maybe. I was wondering, you know how long oysters live? It's kind of
It's a tricky question. Because in cooler climates or cooler temperatures, oysters live a lot longer. I mean, it's not uncommon for oysters to live 15, 20 years in Chesapeake Bay. Even today, you can find some very large oysters that I would guess at 15, 20 years. In warmer climates, organisms grow sooner, grow faster, reproduce sooner, die faster. So my best guess for this area is, if the conditions are right, maybe 2 to 4 years is my best guess.
So, what I'm wondering is, I grew up on Pine Island a couple centuries ago when there were a lot of oysters, and for all practical purposes, there hasn't been an significant oyster fishery, or whatever you want to call it, for a long, long time. And so, I'm a little baffled about all the attention that's being paid. I know it's being used to look at the impact of freshwater discharges, but it seems to me there's still a pretty large population of oysters on crop roots. Are you guys or anybody else looking at the impact of these freshwater discharges on, is this the same oyster that's on the crop roots? And is anybody looking at the impact it's having? Because it seems like they probably provide a lot more oyster habitat than anything else.
Yeah. these are the same oysters, same species of oysters. The reason they're attaching to the mangrove crop roots, etc., is because that's the only hard substrate that's available for them. As you can imagine, we dredged all the estuaries, like you mentioned. Getting into these estuaries and rivers used to be a navigation hazard. Clearly, we don't have a problem anymore. We overfished it, we dredged it, we used the shell in construction. We never really put the substrate back. And on top of that, for all the navigation purposes, we dredged it, we developed the land around it, so there's a lot more siltation. So whatever hard substrate is there, it's covered with fine silt. So the larvae doesn't really have any suitable substrate to attach and grow. And that's the reason why they're settling down on crop roots. I bet if you put old oyster shell next to these crop roots, they'll grow just as well. We don't look at the crop roots per se, but all our reefs are adjacent to the mangrove islands and crop roots. So my best guess is their responses will be almost identical to the ones we're looking at because they're immediately right next to each other.
More questions?